Hello, nerds for humanity. I have Eric McElroy with me from the United Kingdom, but he is an American living overseas, something that I have some personal experience with as well. And he reached out to tell me about the voting overseas stuff, and I thought, hey, why don't we just have a conversation with it on the show? So welcome to the Nerd Zone, Eric. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, Tom. Thanks for having me. And I'm very happy to be a nerd. I'm a lifelong nerd, and ran from it definitely at some points in my youth in the 1980s. It maybe wasn't as cool as it should have been, but I'm
Yes.
all over it now. I'm all
Yes.
over it.
Embrace it.
Yes, embrace the nerd. So,
Yeah.
and
Tell us a
I've
little
got
bit
two.
about yourself, Eric.
Well, I have been in the UK now for 24 years, but hopefully you can tell I have not lost my American accent. I'm from the West Coast as well. I'm from Seattle originally, but came over here for work, and when I got to London, I started doing stand-up comedy, which has an incredible comedy scene here. And then life happened, and I met another American living here, so we've stayed here and raised two British children, which is not something I ever thought I would do, but still stay connected to home and follow closely what's going on, because you can't escape American politics, because if you've lived overseas, Tom, it's everywhere. It
Oh yeah.
permeates, for better or worse, it permeates everything.
I was living in Switzerland in 2016, and
Okay.
I can't tell you how many people after that election were asking me like, what's going on with your country? And I was like,
Yep.
had to try and present the best case that we could for the U.S. at that time. But
Yeah.
yeah. So, are you full time stand up comedian? Like, did you do that when you moved over there, or did that?
No, I came over here and worked for universities, and but I had always wanted to perform, and the comedy scene was just incredible. So I've been lucky enough to be doing it for over 15 years professionally. I run a comedy night in Southwest London, and I've done the Edinburgh Festival Fringe is the biggest arts festival in the world, and I've done that 8 times. And a lot of the
Nice.
shows I've done have been explaining exactly what the hell is going on in America, and because you can't escape it. I mean, when I moved here in 2000, that was during the Iraq War, and
Oh
people used
yeah.
to come up to me and be like, "Why did you invade Iraq?" And I was always told them it was a very difficult personal decision. But it's just you end up being an ambassador, for better or for worse, for everything that's happening back home. So
Yeah. Yeah. In a weird way, I was lucky in 16 to be an American in Europe around, and then shortly after you had Brexit.
yeah,
And so in a weird way, I was like, look, there's a lot of unusual things happening. It's not just America.
yeah,
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about we'll get into the whole overseas voting process.
sure.
But before we get into it, I'm curious, like, what is the view currently from Europe about this race that we've got going on
I mean, I
here?
think there's a lot of anxiety. I mean, the UK has very much put itself on the pro-Ukrainian side of things. We've got a new prime minister here, Keir Starmer, and he's maintained what the conservative government was doing, which is standing by the Ukrainians. And of course, Trump has pretty much aligned himself, in my view, with Russia and other fascist countries, and
Mhm.
has jeopardized that, jeopardizing NATO, which is a big part of European security. So I think there's a lot of unease and concern about, is America a safe partner again, and what's going to happen with that? And he was, he was confrontational on trade relations, on all kinds of things. So I think there's a lot of unease over that. The UK has just voted in a liberal government. Because the Tories, the Conservatives, have been in power for 14 years and had done a really bad job, objectively. Even the Tories here said they knew they were doing a bad job, and so there's different things happening in Europe. You've got Germany has just had a right-wing party win in a local election, but in the UK, we voted in a liberal party. So there is a lot of transformation happening. But overall, unless you're from Hungary and you're Viktor Orban, you're nervous about what a Trump presidency could mean and what that will do with US standing.
Yeah, it is weird how Trump always talks about Orban endorsing him like it's some representative of European views, and
It is
which
not.
yeah. That's like
It is
yeah. Yeah, he's a little bit outside of the mainstream in Europe, I would say. The other thing that I've heard Trump say, and be kind of interesting to get your view, because I haven't lived in Europe now since I was only there until 2020, and then I came back.
Hmm.
Um, Trump has often said, "Look, all of the rest of the world is laughing at us now,
Yeah.
and when he gets back in, they'll respect us again." And my recollection was the inverse. But I'm curious, like, what do people think of Trump? Out
Oh,
there.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a fairly safe bet that anything that Trump is saying, the opposite is true. Uh, I do like the fact that you're gone from 16 to 20 to 20. So you left America for the Trump years. Was that why you were going?
No, it turned out it just was coincidental. I did it for work. I assumed Hillary was going to win. I woke
Yeah.
up that like everybody else and was like, "What just happened?"
Mm,
But yeah, I then yeah, and then I came back, and then we got him out of office, so that was awesome too.
yeah. That
But
was
it
pretty
just it
amazing.
just worked out that way.
But no, there's definitely a lot of concern about, what will happen, and I think even the people here who are kinda like, the sort of like, but he's probably just gonna win again." There's a lot of that, like, yeah, I bet he's just gonna win again." Just because people, I think, enjoy chaos without thinking
Hmm.
about the real consequences. Because beyond maybe the broader political things like NATO and stuff, the day-to-day things that will happen if Trump wins, which are bad for people, don't affect most British people, and, most Europeans. The fact
Hmm.
that he's attacking a woman's right to choose and or removed that and those
Hmm.
kinds of things will be bad for, social care, education, all that kind of stuff that doesn't affect people outside of the US really. But unfortunately, America's influence is so broad. It's kind of overwhelming at times, and I've seen that because I've had an opportunity to travel not just in Europe, but I've been in the Middle East, I've been in South Asia, and it's everywhere. It's sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's embarrassing, sometimes it's scary, but it
Hmm.
does have an impact. It really makes a difference to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I'm curious from your vantage point, how did you see January 6th? That's been debated inside of the country as to what happened
Yeah.
there. Like, what was your perception?
Well, because I am a nerd, Tom, I was watching the proceedings that day, and I was sitting with my kids, and we were live streaming it, and so they were, well, it was roughly 4 years ago, so 14 and 12, so they were super interested in watching a procedure happening in Congress that no one
Mm,
has ever. I mean, had you ever watched a January 6th vote count in Congress
I
before?
never, no,
Did you
not
even
not
know it
prior to that. Yeah.
happened? It's like, it's not something, but because everything had been so contentious, we were watching, and then when the rioters started moving towards the Capitol, I was transfixed, and I was sitting there with my kids, and I was telling them, "This is history. This has never
Mm,
happened before to," and they're US citizens as well, even though they were born here, they're dual citizens, and, and, so I mean, I stayed up all night watching. It's tragedy. It's
yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of the uh, similar to the white Bronco moment in time where we
Mm,
were watching, OJ driving around on the
yeah,
highway, and you're like, "Well, this is a small thing," and then it became a bigger thing. And obviously, with Jan 6, it was definitely. I still can't believe that happened,
yeah.
and the irony is so weird in that he's always saying like we can't become a banana republic, and it's like you are the one that did this. But yeah, like one of the constant Twitter debates I've been on is a lot of Trump supporters are saying, hey, that didn't really happen, you're just buying
Yeah.
into the propaganda. And I was like, I watched it live on C-SPAN,
Yeah.
so unless those were all actors, crisis actors or whatever, like that happened. And then they're like,
Ah,
oh, it was really Antifa dressed up as MAGA people, but I don't know. I'm not sure I buy it.
which is I've never seen that costume in a Halloween shop before, the
I
option
mean,
to
they
dress up as.
really looked like MAGA people. They were really good.
Really?
I mean, they did a good job
It
dressing up.
yeah.
So are you planning to participate in this election from abroad? I mean, I'm telling you, from California, I feel like my vote isn't as powerful as a Michigan or Wisconsin vote? Like, how do you
Well,
feel about a UK vote?
I think any vote matters, and I think because I'm from Washington State, my wife is from New York State, so those are the home states that we'll be voting in. Because so when you live overseas, you kind of vote back to the last place that you last lived. So whether however long ago that was. So for me, that was 24 years ago. My wife was 27 years in the UK, and then for my kids as dual citizens, they have a right to vote. And we can kind of choose which state to register them based on our family connections. So there's it's whatever you reach out to. Now, yes, in Washington State and California, in New York, do our votes matter? Well, they matter depending on what the down ballot looks like in your
Mm-hmm.
county, other
Mm-hmm.
Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
because right now, I mean, I used to split the ticket all the time, and I never considered myself that partisan. I didn't even register as a Democrat until Hillary was running against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but because the Republican Party has become essentially a cult, and even Dick Cheney is going to vote for a Democrat. So, for those of us I
Yeah.
guess we're guessing the same age, Tom, this
Yeah.
is seismic. This is not normal politics.
Yeah.
So and I think that also because Trump, when he loses, and I believe he will lose, he will say that the election was stolen. So we need every single vote in every single part of the US to
Mm.
show that millions and millions and millions of people do not believe in their agenda, do not believe in going back, like they say. And that's why I think it still matters. So I think your vote does mean something. Now, obviously, Electoral College does mess things up a little bit and is slightly anti-democratic, but that's why I think it still matters and is important for everyone everywhere to vote.
Yeah, this is kind of like the Democratic version of the MAGA thing, too big to rig. Like they're
It's
saying, hey,
exactly what it is.
everybody needs to show up because those
Exactly.
evil Democrats are going to steal it. And I think what we're saying is, look, everybody needs to show up because if and when Trump loses, he will likely uh, make the argument that, oh, it was stolen from him.
He's already saying that. I mean, he's
Yeah,
already making that argument. It's
yeah,
there.
yeah. And like he's saying, like, I mean, the debate hasn't happened yet with Kamala, and he's like, oh yeah, she has all the answers. They gave her the
Yeah.
questions. This is all rigged. It's like, wow, you're just he's such a heads I win, tails you cheated guy. But regardless, what we're saying is even though I'm in California and you're in UK, not only is our down ballot kind of voice going to be heard, but also if we can run up the popular vote,
Exactly.
then in theory, some of Trump supporters will say, well, look, they kind of like most people don't want our guy. That sucks. They're wrong, but that's them's the breaks.
Yeah.
There is a little wishful thinking there because I feel like a lot of MAGA supporters, no matter what happens, like even if it's like 53-47 in the popular,
Yeah.
they're gonna say it was rigged.
Yeah, there is that percentage of people out there that are going to say it, but I think that's. But and I guess that's part of being American, because Britain is very cynical. But I still have hope,
I
even
love
after
it.
24 years of living in the UK. So, and that's where because Democrats Abroad is an official part of the Democratic Party, and so we've done fundraising comedy nights for them because that's what I can do in my wheelhouse. But then raising the awareness for Vote from Abroad, which is why I reached out to you and your platform and trying to spread the word, because basically, any U.S. citizen, like even my kids that have never lived in the U.S., is eligible to vote in federal elections. So each state kind of treats them differently. And what the Vote from Abroad website does, which it's votefromabroad.org, is they just help people register. So this advocacy work might get some Republicans registered. I'd still rather that people voted than not. And where it's crucial is that a lot of those millions of people that live overseas, and there's more than five, I don't have my stats things, but there's at least 5 million Americans living around the world. Many of them come from swing states. Georgia was famously 11,000 votes. Wisconsin was like 18,000 votes. Arizona was 12. I guarantee you there are more than 12,000 Arizonans living outside of the US. And if they register and they vote, then that could be what swings this election.
That is for sure. And And yeah, if there's overseas folks whose last U.S. state of registration was Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, Arizona, those votes are probably some of the most important votes in the last like 20, 30 years that will have been cast.
Yeah.
Because if this guy gets back in, he's said he's not going to have any institutionalists in his government. So he's not going to have any guardrails. It'll be, I guess Jared and Miller and Bannon, like those types.
Oh, it's going to be, because I have a podcast called American Exchange, where the whole point of it was for me to dial across and to speak to people like you and others who understand what is happening in my home country, because I've been gone for so long. An election is all about the vibe and the energy, and I don't have a sense of that. And a lot of my guests over the years have ended up being former Republicans. So the latest episode, I just had Olivia Troy on. She's one of the Republicans for Harris. She spoke at the DNC, and she worked for Mike Pence in the Trump White House. And so her whole thing is talking about, how awful this administration is, and, connecting with those people and trying to, to understand exactly what's happening, what the vibe is. Because from abroad, it seems like a no-brainer that no one would vote for Trump. But obviously, the day-to-day lives of what's happening to people are different. And the media bubble that people have found themselves in is very different. I have family members that will vote for Trump. And no matter what I say and no matter what I do, they believe they believe in the big lie. They believe in, they vegged out on Fox News, and they are well-baked. They are overdone.
Yes. Yeah. I have multiple MAGA family members, and the latest thing they keep telling me is like, oh, you're buying into all this propaganda. Like you need to rethink where you're getting your news. And I'm like, where are you getting your news? Another family member was saying to me, MAGA of the MAGA influence was saying, why is it that all of these, college educated people are always going for the Democrats? Like, what's going on with that? And I'm like, there's a lot of ways that I can interpret that. Like, I'm not sure that you're making the best argument. And you could say the same about people who've lived internationally.
Yeah.
A lot of people who have studied abroad or lived and worked abroad, they come back with a different perspective. And often, they might be, even if they're Republicans, they might be more like Nikki Haley, Mitt Romney types than like the pure, like ultra MAGA.
And I don't know how you feel. I've, the luster of being an American, there is a lot. There is you sort of see that there's a lot of like rah USA. And when you come outside of the US, you realize how strange that kind of is. Like, it's different than European countries. The fact that you can be in the middle of Kansas and going down a street and there's American flags on every house. Like, are people worried they're going to forget where they live? Like, why are there so many American flags everywhere? You don't see that in other countries, at least in, Western Europe, which are like for like countries in a lot of ways. But I still, think that there is something special that is in the US. And that makes me want to be engaged and care. Yeah. So one of my family members like, why do you care anymore? You left us. I was like, because it matters. And because my kids might go back to the States. My daughter is 18. She may choose to live in America, and I want to make sure that she can be in an America that is safe, where she could maybe go visit some friends in Texas and not worried that they're going to try and find out what her medical history is. So that's why I care. And that's why most Americans overseas care. We have family there. We might come back someday. We still have to file tax returns. You were overseas.
The privilege, yes.
Being free freedom does not come for free, Tom. You got to pay.
Yeah. That's a whole nother topic, like the tax system for expats. But we'll save that for another one. I do have a question from Soldier One, who is a channel member. He's a Midwestern expat who's in Hong Kong.
Oh, brilliant.
What's your top argument that might convince Republicans to not vote for Trump?
It's really hard. One of the guests I've had on my podcast a couple times is Joe Walsh, who's a former Republican congressman and
Yeah.
had a radio
Hmm.
show, and he's brilliant. And he basically still talks to the Trump supporters every day. And he says it's really hard. It takes time. You have to not get triggered.
Mm.
You have to just keep coming back and try and find, what's their point where they might see the light. Is it that they have family members who are going to have their loans forgiven, through the Biden and Harris administration's efforts to do that? Are they going to see that jobs are coming back? Are they going to see, like for me, I think about my daughter's safety if she came back to a Midwestern or Southern state. And maybe, just the fact that, and then these old school Republicans that are stepping away, of course, then they're like, well, they're neocons. Like, yeah, but it's beyond that. And just the fact that Trump is I think the weird argument. Like if you if they, have them sit down and watch a full hour and a half Trump speech. And because I'm a nerd, Tom, I watch the
Mm.
speeches and they are mental. What are you talking about with birds and Hannibal Lecter and birds and windmills and
Yeah.
your toilet has to get flushed 12 times and you just did it in one of your recent episodes going back to all the weird stuff that Trump did. And
Yeah.
you listed some things that I had blocked out and you were like in the first 4 months of his
I
administration.
know.
It's crazy. And
Yeah.
there's enough crazy in America as it is. We do crazy better than anyone. We don't need it in the White House. We need boring in the White House.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
I
mean,
guess
he's perfect to be a TV kind of personality
exactly.
and an entertainer because he is entertaining. But
Yep.
commander in chief of the most powerful country in the world, like, I don't know if that's really the best role for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think a lot of us have blocked out, like, even you would think what happened leading up to Jan 6, like a person trying to overturn the results of his own election while in office, calling
Yeah.
up governors saying, I need you to find me 10,000 votes. Like, I'm pretty sure if Obama did that, they'd be pissed.
And he probably
Pissed.
would have done it in a tan suit, which would have made it even worse.
God forbid.
It's
Yeah.
so I guess that's the hope is that there's some people that are gone, and I'm sure they'd say the same about us that we're gone towards whatever. But I know that the candidate who's standing up for the Democratic Party is not a felon, is not been liable for sexual assault, fraud, and has not tried to overturn an election. So that's what I keep coming back to.
Yeah.
Like Tim Walz said, he's weird.
He's a strange bird, and he's also he's old.
Yeah, that's
And
another
this is a
thing.
tough job.
It's time. I mean, it's generation. It's time to change. Now,
Yeah.
I'm still glad she's closer in age to me that I like because I'm getting to the age now where the presidents are going to be younger than me, and that's freaking me out a little. But still, I think all around it's there. It's time for It's time for a new energy and a new generation, and that's
Yeah.
important. That's what America's all about.
Which is also interesting because the MAGA folks for the last 2 years have been talking about, Biden's cognitive decline and how can you have someone who can't keep names straight in the
Yeah.
White House? And it's like, well, look at your guy, man. Like, we made a change.
Well, he was
You know?
talking to Elon Musk yesterday.
Yes, good old Leon. Well, and then he got like Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi confused. I mean,
Yeah,
they're very different. Like, you
they're
couldn't, they have nothing in common.
yeah, and he said it the way he kept saying it when he did the Nikki Haley thing. He kept saying Nikki Haley instead of Nancy so many times. And I've done public speaking where you say the wrong thing and you can feel it's wrong, but
Mhm.
and you're talking. So I mean, these things happen, especially as you get older. I'm getting older. I'm not old enough to be president. Apparently, you need to be in your 80s for that. But yeah, I mean, definitely Biden stepping down. And I think the reason why it's thrown Trump so much that Biden stepped down is because it was a very self-sacrificing thing to do. And Trump does not do self-sacrifice. And I think he cannot get his head around how somebody could look at the greater good and step away.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why he has such a low opinion of people who serve in the military. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to him.
And the military vote, talking about voting from overseas, is important as well, because a lot of the people overseas are
Hmm.
military. They do probably traditionally vote Republican, but if you've got a military family overseas, speaking again to your commenter from Hong Kong,
Hmm.
point out look how Trump has treated the military. Yes, Afghanistan was awful, but look at the way overall what Trump has done for the military, in the way he treats people, the way he treated Arlington Cemetery, the way he
Hmm.
talks about, them being losers and suckers. I mean, the sacrifice those people make to serve um, is huge, and I don't think Trump cares anything about that.
Yeah. It's also noteworthy that pretty much no one that he had in his original administration is openly endorsing him at the cabinet
Yeah,
level. And it's like, well, that's not a great sign. Like, if
no.
you want to hire a new CEO and everybody that worked for that CEO in the last company is saying no bueno, like, that's a yellow flag.
Well, all the rational signs are there. That's the
Yeah.
thing that is so infuriating about this, and that's why everyone has to vote. If the majority of Americans vote, they side with the agenda that the Democrats have. They side, the majority of people in America want reasonable gun control. They want women to have the right to choose. They want all of the things that are the Democratic agenda. But Democrats are typically terrible at messaging, and terrible about getting in the mess, and terrible about fighting the dirty fight. And, we have to
Yeah.
get the word out.
100%.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you're watching this from overseas, where can you get more info to make sure your registration's all lined up and
So,
everything?
yeah, so if you're overseas, or if you got family overseas, votefromabroad.org.
Mhm.
Or of course you can call your local state, registration office or county registration office. But what's great about the Vote from Abroad website is it guides you through the decision process, and then they have experts available to help you if you're stuck. So, like, if you've just never had, um, a residency in the U.S. and you just don't even know where to start, they can guide you, because you have a right to vote. You are required to file a tax return. That, America and taxation, representation with taxation, that's our whole shtick. So that's where they can help you do that. And that's regardless of any party affiliation. Obviously, I'm clearly biased, but it doesn't. I mean, I'd rather have someone vote than not.
Agree. And then, how can they follow more about what you're talking about so that we can keep the conversation going? Where can they see more of your stuff?
Well, I'm still hanging in there on Twitter, as I can see you are. I've moved over. I've got something on Threads now. I'm on Instagram. What else? Some of these other ones I don't even know. Like Blue Sky, I can't. It's too many. It's too many. I'm too old, Tom. But so those are my main places, and then I have a YouTube channel as well. Nowhere near as popular as yours, but I'm trying. And then the American Exchange podcast is available on all your platforms. So
All right.
so yeah, check it out there, please.
Yeah, I'll have to subscribe to the American Exchange Pod. That sounds really fun.
Please. That'd
Yeah.
be great, Tom. Thank you.
Anything else that you wanted to share before we wrap up, Eric?
No, just, I guess stay safe and vote. That's the main thing that I hope people do. And but really great to meet you, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. I spent also 13 years in Seattle, so
Oh, brilliant.
we have a shared connection there. Yeah, it was
It's a nice place.
wonderful, wonderful town, and no more beautiful place in the summer than
Yeah.
Seattle. Yeah.
That's the qualifier. Winter is brutal. If you don't like the sun, Seattle's the place for you.
But
That's
you kind of had a nice transition to UK weather. Like, you probably wasn't too hard for you to adjust.
any point in your life, if you're thinking about making the transition to live in the United Kingdom, go live in Seattle for a while and then come here. We don't have any mountains, but the weather is just as gloomy, and it gets dark in the winter at about 4:30. If you're in Scotland, it gets dark. The sun just never comes up in Scotland. But I love Scotland. It's one of my favorite parts of the UK. But so yeah, I'm suspicious of, because I don't know, where are you in California? Are you Southern California?
Northern California.
Northern. Okay. That's
Hmm.
because the last time I was in LA and it was 70 degrees every single day, and I was there for 2 weeks, I was like, this is not normal. This is
Yeah,
weird.
yeah,
That
yeah,
makes me
yeah.
suspicious.
Yeah,
So,
we get a little cooler at night. I'm in Palo Alto, so in the Bay Area,
okay.
and but the daytime is quite sunny and blue skies, so can't complain.
Every day?
Most days, but you know what else? Most days our taxes are pretty. You pay for it, So,
Yeah, that's true.
but I'm glad that that you're on, and I appreciate you putting in the effort to get everyone to participate in this election and in our democracy. It's worth fighting for, and I remember even participating in the primaries from overseas, and
Yeah,
you feel like, hey, it's a privilege. Like it's almost not respectful to not vote. Like you should.
hmm.
People died for this right, and it's an important one. So let's honor it.
Yeah, and let's have Kamala in the White House.
Well, that would be great. I would love that. I would love to see, and I liked him,
Yeah,
and I like the fact that they're a little younger than the last generation, and it's time for some new ideas. And the main thing is, I don't think I don't want to go back to those days where there was like you were afraid to read the news every day, like what has so and so done today,
yeah.
which was and I think if we had another Trump term, I think he'd be even more unhinged. So
Oh,
I'm ready
I hope.
for Harris Walls.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Eric. Talk to you later, buddy.
All right, take care. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye. All right. So if you have friends who are overseas, please make sure that they participate. They can find out more info from voteabroad.org. I have to jump to another call in a few minutes, but because this channel would not exist without our members, I got to give some shout outs, and then I'll give you my current 3 thoughts on the state of the race. But let's thank our channel members. And if you like this content and you're like, hey, I want to see this channel keep going and produce more of these conversations, you can click the join link, and it helps us cover our streaming software, our thumbnail editor software, podcast hosting fees, that kind of thing. Like the channel's still just barely profitable. So if we can actually earn any money, then that'll go into upgrading the production values and maybe growing the audience through some marketing. So let's start with our biggest supporter who is in the live chat, which is Soldier One. He is a member of the Nerd Cabinet, and he's been supporting this channel for 52 months. Amazing. And then we've got the members of the Nerd Congress, Kristen Slevin, Bike Pike, and Zig PC. Zig is now 1 month as a member of the Congress, but 23 months supporting the channel. So you can always upgrade. Let's say you're a Nerd City Council member. You want to help us out a little more. Nerd City level, Nerd City Council. Gene, David, DK, Jackalego, Mr. History, Mona, Vaughn, Yang, Dean, Galessa, Jay Parandana, Jason, Daniel, Jeremy, Mickey, Yoda, Jackson, Unkiu. And then here are registered nerds, where it's $1.99 a month. You wouldn't even notice it. And so I'll scroll through in the order of their membership. So thank you to all of the registered nerds out there. You guys rock. Okay. So I said I would share some closing thoughts. Here's what they are. Number one is this race is freaking 50-50. Don't believe the MAGA. Donald Trump is not winning, but Harris is not winning by much either. They're pretty much kind of head to head. So if you can donate, please do so. And if you are on the fence about voting, you definitely should. In terms of general election, you've got Harris up by 2 in RMG, and this is Ohio. So let's look at national. We've got Harris 47-44 nationally. I mean, you know that Trump polls pretty badly, so there's probably more support for him than 44, maybe 46, 47. And then we'll look at the quick battlegrounds. Pennsylvania, 46.2 to 45.5. Wisconsin, 47 to 44. Michigan, 46.6 to 44.5. North Carolina, 46.5 to 45.9 with Trump ahead. Arizona, 46 to 45.6 with Trump ahead by 0.4. Did we cover everything? I mean, people talk about Florida. I'm pretty sure that's going to be Trump, 48 to 44. But yeah, those are some of the big battlegrounds. So please make sure you vote, especially if you are in any of the battleground states. But even if you're not, you're like me, you're in California, you're in New York, and you're like, oh, I'm solid blue, solid red state. We got to run up the popular vote because we do not want another Jan 6. And we want it to be really clear that the country did not want another 4 years of Donald J. Trump drama. We're done. His time's up.